I was talking to a lady from England the other day. I got to ask her sign the next time she hits me up. And she asked me if I would talk about goddess Auset. You guys know that that is the goddess that I work with. I work with a lot of different gods and goddesses and angels, but that is my mother goddess. So that's the main goddess that I work with the majority of the time. And when I initiated as a priestess of Mayat, I took her first name and my spiritual father's last name. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about Goddess Auset. Of course, I've read everything I could find about her, so I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about her and explain a little bit about the Egyptian pantheon. So I'm going to do the introduction first, and then I'll tell you everything I know. I am Queen Auset Haru, and thank you for joining me for another wonderful edition of Ask an Aquarius. If you haven't already, please hit the red subscribe button and smack the bell. Also, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and pass it on to somebody else who might like it too. Please leave us a positive comment in the comment section and stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to read and discuss some other positive comments that I got from the comment section. If you would like to get a reading done, if you would like to give our channel a donation, if you would like to get me one of my cool gifts off my Amazon wish list, if you would like to get some Ask an Aquarius or some ArchAngel Michael merchandise, if you'd like to become a patron on Patreon, any of the above, all that information is underneath this video. So now I'm going to tell you about Goddess Auset. So when you initiate into any spiritual system, including your confirmation and Catholicism, now that I think about it, but most spiritual systems, you take a name. You take a name because you are being reborn. So the old you has died and you're being reborn. So a lot of people, when they meet me, I tell them to call me Auset because that is the name that I took when I initiated. And I took that name to remind me to be like Auset. Kind of like, what would Jesus do? What would Auset do? So every time somebody calls me Auset, I remember, be like Auset. Be kind, be gentle, be a leader, do the right thing. Do the things that you know Auset would do and would tell you to do, is what comes to mind. So you can really take any name that you want to, but that's why I took her name. And my spiritual father is God Haru. So I took Haru's first name to remind me, my masculine side, to be like Haru. Be courageous, be grounded, be focused, be disciplined. So whenever somebody says Queen Auset Haru, this is what I hear. Be these things, embody these characteristics. So who is Auset? Who is Haru? Who are these people? The Egyptian pantheon changed a lot. My spiritual system is called Mayat. Mayat is the ancient Egyptian. They called themselves it was called Kemet, the land of the blacks. So Kemet is modern day Egypt. But that's what they called themselves during the dynasties, the pharaohs and the pharaohesses. That's what they called themselves. The land of Kemet, the Kemetians, the Kemetic people. You may hear these terms. That's who they're talking about. It was changed to Egypt later. So Goddess Auset and Haru are of the ancient pantheon. This group of people believed in one God, Ra, the sun god. But Ra had many children, and each one of them is a god and goddess. But what I've come to find is that they're all aspects of Ra. So they all go back to one. All of these many rivers lead to one ocean. So when you come into Mayat, you can take whatever name, Egyptian name, whatever name that you want, and I took those names to remind me to be like them. So she wanted me to talk about Auset. Auset, according to mythology, life began in Africa. all, I was getting ready to say all life began in Africa, but I wouldn't say that. Human life, the earliest fossils that we have were found in Africa. So it's believed, according to legend, that Nubia was where the first, Homo sapiens sapiens and, and even the one before that were found right there around that area. Tanzania, Nubia, that area. So this would be considered East Africa. So the belief is that Auset and her husband Asar left Nubia to establish Kemet as a colony of Nubia. And they were the first king and queen, or pharaoh and pharaohess, as they would have called it. They were the first spiritual, political leaders. Because in that time period, and still in some places in Africa, the spiritual and political is together. So if you're a leader, you have to know the spiritual ways too. So it's believed that they went down the Nile, they followed the Nile, and they went to the top part where modern day Egypt is, and they settled there. And Auset and Asar were the pharaoh and pharaohess. Now, they also had a brother, or two or three or four, quite a few, members of the family. And basically, the one brother, Set, had beef with Asar. He was jealous of him. And Auset and Asar were, doing their thing, running the colony. They were big on leadership. They were big on righteousness. They were big on doing the right thing. They were big on doing Mayat. Mayat was the spiritual system. And Mayat is the basis for all beliefs. Doing the right thing, being light, helping other people, A lot of spiritual systems have a lot of these same kind of concepts. So they were big on that. They were big on keeping, things in check and keeping away negativity. And Set represents this negativity. So Set ended up killing Asar. And Auset was the mistress of magic. She was, the first priestess. I mean, she was the first priestess. She was the first, pharaohess. She was all of that. And she is quite a force to be reckoned with. And she used her magic to bring him back to life. So when she brought Asar back to life, they conceived a son, Haru. Then Set found Asar. They got into another scuffle. He killed him again and dismembered him this time so that he couldn't be brought back to life. And Asar went on to be the god of the underworld, the god of the dead. So here is Auset with the son, Haru. At the time she was pregnant, then she had the son. So now Set wants to kill her son because her son is going to grow up and take the place of his father. He's going to be the next pharaoh. And Set wanted power. He wanted all these things. Power, the fame, the crown. He wanted all these things. Very common story that we hear amongst, people who are in, the monarchy, as you would say. So Auset hid. She used her magic to hide herself and her son until he reached adulthood. So for this reason, she's said to be a patron of single mothers, because Auset was by herself raising Haru while Asar was lord of the underworld. So she was raising him, hiding, running around. She was kept, a lot of people took her in. A lot of people hid her. She was helped. And when he reached adulthood, when he reached full maturity, he went and found Set. And they battled. They battled back and forth, according to legend, for years and years and years. Finally, Haru was able to defeat Set and take his place on the crown, as pharaoh next to his mother. And of course, after she went off to do her next, spiritual duty, because Asar becomes the underworld lord, and she goes off to be, you know, the basically the mistress of heaven. I mean, she's the highest you can get under Ra rate. Ra and rate. Ra is the masculine, rate is the feminine. Right underneath that is Auset. So after her physical death, she would have went back into her spiritual to work as goddess. You know, she would go from pharaohess back to goddess. You know, she's born goddess, becomes flesh, goes back to goddess. So that's who Auset is. And when I came into the spiritual system, the first thing that happens when you come into the spiritual system is you get a reading. And the reading tells you which of the pantheon of gods and goddesses, which ones are on your head, they call it, on your head. On your head means that they are the ones who are your mother, your spiritual mother, and your spiritual father. So when I discovered Mayat and went to have my reading done, the 3 cards came out for me. And this is pretty unusual. Usually you only get a mother and a father, like, you know, a human. But I had 3 cards pop up. Auset, Haru, and the third one was the trickster. The trickster energy is known in every culture. They call him Loki. They call it Eshu. They call it Papa Legba. There's always the trickster. So when the woman did my cards, she said, Auset is on your head. Haru is your father on your head. And you have a trickster that also governs. Very unusual. And I laugh because I'm like, yeah, I do. I definitely have a trickster that's been with me forever. It's been in my energy since I was a kid. Got me in trouble many, many times. But I laughed when it came up in the cards because I was like, oh my goodness, that makes perfect sense. So when I was taking my name, I was like, okay, the trickster likes to stay in the shadows. So I didn't use that in my formal name. I just used my mother and father. So that's who Goddess Auset is. And characteristics of Auset. Auset is nurturing. Auset is mothering. Auset is one who teaches you to be a leader. Auset is one who helps you with your magic. If you're somebody who's a spiritual, magical person, Auset would be the one to call if you really want some help with that. She is just, like I said, she's, you know, she's queen. So when I saw that she was on my head, I knew that I would be some type of spiritual leader, because in general, Auset usually comes to spiritual leaders. So she a lot of times says things and gives me messages and things to say to people. So you know that if Auset is on your head, that you might have a spiritual leadership in your path, even if it's just something small, like, you know, a YouTube messages or a small church or whatever, you know. But you know, in some kind of way, spiritual leadership is usually what she's going to be training you for. So that's Goddess Auset. So I initiated, and that is the goddess that I've been working with. I initiated in like 2010. So I started it way before that. It took a long time to finish. It took me 8 years to finish my initiation. It was not a fast process. And at the end of it, I had been working with her all the way through. I knew she was my mother all the way through. And at the end, when it was time to take my name, it just was obvious to me, Queen Auset Haru. It was just obvious to me. Now, a lot of people just take a feminine name or just a masculine name. I wanted to honor my feminine and my masculine. We all have both. And most of us honor one or the other. And I wanted to honor them both at the same time, because they both are very strong parts of me. So that's my story. Well, not my story, that's her story. And If you want to know more, you can Google Goddess Auset. Another thing, Auset is her Egyptian or her Kemetic name. The Greeks called her Isis. So I'm sure many of you who haven't heard Auset may have heard Goddess Isis, because that's what the Greeks called her. And they called Asar a different name too. Horus. They called, no. They called Heru Horus, and they called Asar a different name as well. And I cannot remember his, Osiris. That was his name. So you might have heard Isis, Osiris, and Horus. That is Auset, Asar, and Heru. And there's a whole pantheon. There's Tahuti, there's Bast, there's Sekhmet, there's Geb, there's Herukuti. There's a whole pantheon. There's Hathor. There's a whole pantheon of gods and goddesses under this spiritual system. Just like with the Greeks, the Romans, different spiritual systems you come across. But those are the strongest influences on me. Okay? Let's take a look at the positive comment. We got a positive comment from Big Head. What's up, Big Head? Everybody in the hood call people Big Head. That is so funny. And Big Head said, just found out I'm an Aquarius sun. Okay. Sagittarius moon. Me too. And a Scorpio rising. Okay. So you and I have the same sun and moon. But my rising is Aquarius. So I'm very interested, Big Head, if you get a chance to answer this question. I want to know, how are your emotions? Because for me, dealing with this combination is not easy. And you have an extra energy coming from the water sign. So I wonder, do you have any difficulty with your emotions? Because I damn sure do. All my life, I've had to deal with my emotions. Mary's Women Ministries of Light. Ah, nice. Hello, how are you? Mary's Ministry says, I like to throw the whole sign away. She's talking about cancers. And honestly, I don't throw any sign away. Seriously. And I've had difficulty with different signs. Cancer, Capricorn, I've had some difficulty with them. But I would still not throw them away. Because even in signs that I have difficulty with, I find good people. My grandmother, my favorite grandmother, was a Capricorn. So even though I have difficulty with that sign, that was my girl. I still got mad love for grandma. Cancer too. I know some cancers that are so cool. There's one that I meet up with every time I go to Philadelphia. So in any sign, please try to remember, people. In any sign, there's good people and there's bad people. Now, it might be you get along with more or less of one sign, but it's never the whole sign. I've had people say, oh, throw Aquarius away. I can't stand Aquarius. I dated an Aquarius and she was toxic, or he was toxic. This and that and this. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not me. I'm not your ex. I'm not the fucked up person you chose. So I don't do that to other people, because I know at the end of the day, there's good people and bad people in every group. Every bunch of apples has some rotten ones. Okay? All right, guys. Come back soon, because I got a lot more to say. See you later.